now taking over your airwaves. In 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the studios in the wrestling capital of the South, it's another terrific episode of The BENGEBUSTER Show. Please welcome your host, Tony Binge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The BENGEBUSTER Show, as we are coming to you this week right here in our studios in the wrestling capital of the South, Charlotte, North Carolina. And before I get started, I want to bring on right now my co-host, co-conspirator, Chris Rock and Roll Plano. Chris, what is going on?
Woo, Tony, oh my gosh, we're back another week here. I'm so excited. We have a great show lined up for the fans. I know there's a lot going on in the wrestling world right now, in the music world, but I'm excited about the show tonight. And, hey, I appreciate you having me on, and we're ready to roll.
Yeah, it's going to be a great show, Chris. This week has been one of those weeks where it's like, man, what else can happen? The last podcast we done, we had just lost Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. And this week, we understand that we lost the assassin, number one, talking about Jody Hamilton. Not only was he the assassin, but he was also one of the head trainers there at World Championship Wrestling. He became a manager. He managed Pretty Wonderful. And, of course, many other wrestlers have become wrestlers because of the assassin. And not only that, he's also the father of referee Nick Patrick. So our hearts go out to the Hamilton family. But Chris,
and if I could chime in,
yes, please.
On Jody, I didn't actually even know that Jody passed away. Gosh, oh my God, I had a flashback there, Tony. Jody, God, what a great guy. He didn't know me from Adam, other than via through Pistol Pez Watley, and I'm going back, late '80s, late '90s here. Jody was really instrumental, in sending a lot of guys from what was back then the WCW power plant to work some of my shows. He would send 2, 3, 4, 5 guys up to work to get some ring time, which was kind of exciting. And Pez was involved in that as well, and Rocky King and those guys. But gosh, I did not know that. I talking to the guy on the phone and meeting him in person. I only met him in person one time, but talked to him on the phone many a times. What a great guy. The guy had just so much knowledge for the business. It was he was a hidden gem down working at the power plant and behind the scenes.
Yeah, for sure. One of my first memories of the assassin was when he was teaming with Hercules Hernandez as the assassins in Mid-Atlantic, and with Paul Jones as their manager. And they were feuding with our good friend Handsome Jimmy, the Boogie Woogie Man Valiant. And if you remember, the assassins done something that a lot of people never thought would ever happen. They cut off the beard of Handsome Jimmy, and of course put him into depression. But then he came back with the Boogie Woogie Man Jam, and packed out the Charlotte and the Greensboro Coliseum, and they were off to the races. But definitely a sad time losing the assassin, and man, it's just crazy. But the reason for our podcast this week, we had another topic we were going to talk, but then today when we hear the passing of beautiful Bobby Eaton, and a lot of wrestlers have passed away over the last few weeks, Chris. But I have to say, losing Bobby, it hit me the hardest. I woke up this morning about 6:30, and my Facebook page was flooded with people talking about it, and I was like, wait a minute, now hold on. And but man, I have to tell you, I think I've talked about this on another previous podcast, but Bobby Eaton is the main reason I become a pro wrestler. I know when I went to wrestling camp and started training and learning my craft, Bobby was my favorite and always has been my favorite. And I patterned my wrestling style after Bobby Eaton. I would do his swinging neck breaker, and anyway, when when I was trying to figure out my name, like what I was going to call myself, Bobby was Beautiful Bobby, and Midnight Express was my favorite tag team. So I knew I wanted to do something similar to Bobby, but Bobby had the nickname BB, so I had to have TT. I had to have TT. So I was trying to come up with a name that started, that sounded good with Tony. And my cousin, who used to come with me to the matches, he said, "Hey, isn't Beautiful Bobby your favorite wrestler?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, if Bobby's beautiful, then you be terrific." And that's kind of how I got my name, Terrific Tony. My cousin gave it to me, but not only that, I wanted it to be similar to Bobby's, and it was. And then as the years went by, and I become wrestling and learning and everything, and then I finally got to meet Bobby. I told him, I said, I always had my gear always made by K&H, which is the same people that made all the gear for all the big stars in the 80s. And I went up to Bobby one time at a show, and I said, Bobby, man, I said, my name's Tony. I'm glad to meet you. And he said, "Hey, nice to meet you too." And he asked me who I was trained by, and I told him. And then he said, "Oh, sit down here and let's talk." So we talked for a little bit, and he gave me a few pointers in wrestling. And then I told him, I said, "Bobby," I said, "man, you always had the greatest looking gear of all time." And he was so humble. He's like, "Oh, well, thank you." And I said, "But I have to tell you, my favorite tights that you ever wore was when you was in the Dangerous Alliance, the red ones with the shooting stars." And he looked at my tights I had on. He says, "Well, brother," he said, "the same lady made my tights, made your tights. So if you want a pair, just call up here and tell her." So wow. I did. Bobby gave me permission to go have tights made like his, and so I did. And then after I had them made, I wore them a few years, and then I was on another show with him one time, and I walked past him and he said, "Hey, brother, hey, I like them tights. I wish I had a pair like those." I thought that was so funny.
Wow.
He was he did have a pair like them, but it was Bobby was so great. And another funny story. I'm tagging with Bobby, right, Chris? We're tagging in a tag match, right? And we're the baby faces, and we're working this heel team. And I'm getting a little heat on the other team, so I shoot the guy. Well, I asked Bobby before we go out there. I'm like, "Hey, Bobby, are you going to do the swinging neck breaker?" Because I used to always do it, right? So, "Bobby, are you going to do the swinging neck breaker?" He's like, "What's that?" Like he's ribbing me, right? Like he's not, he's pretending like he don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm like, Bobby, you shoot the guy in the ropes, you give him the boot to the stomach, then you hit the other rope, you come in, you do the swinging neck breaker. He's like, "Brother, I ain't never done that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I'm like, either Bobby's not thinking right or he's ribbing me,
right? Which
I knew he was ribbing me, right? So we
get one of the two, something going on.
So we get in the match, right? And I look at him and I shoot the dude in. I give him the boot, and I look at Bobby. I point to Bobby and I run in. I give the guy the swinging neck breaker, and I look over to get to see what Bobby's reaction is going to be. And Bobby gives me the X, which is the Midnight Express sign, right? So I knew then Bobby liked it. And then he said, "Hey, brother, tag me in." So I go tag him in. He picks the dude up, shoots the guy in, gives the guy the same move. So this guy has to take the same neck breaker twice, once from me, once from Bobby. And then later on, I get I get a little hot. I get some more heat with this guys, and I'm giving him arm drags. Boom, boom, I give him arm drag. And then Bobby comes in the ring and he stops. He goes, "Oh, wait a minute. Oh, brother." He goes, "I want to take that move." So Bobby wanted to come in and feed to my arm drag too, which I thought was really funny. It was a good compliment as well, because after the match, Bobby's like, "Brother, those Ricky Steamboat arm drags were beautiful." I said, "Oh, well, thank you." But Bobby was such a great soul. Now, Chris, when you were running NDW, did you ever use Bobby Eaton on any of your shows?
I never used, really, to my knowledge, no, I never used the Midnight Express. Oh, the Rock and Roll Express, absolutely. Tony, I gotta say, I never did. I'd be telling a fib if I did, but gosh, just so many memories of them, and I mean, they were in the mix with the NWA and really the tag team wrestling scene on a national level. I mean, it was like what drew me to the Midnight Express. And I mean, I'm not gonna say I was ever a big fan of the Midnight Express. They were there. I loved them. They had great rivalries, but I loved their entrance music.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for
when
sure.
they were walking to the ring, when that beat hit, and there was no lyrics even being played, you just knew who was coming to the ring, whether it was, Dennis Condrey, Stan Lane with Bobby, whoever was in that ring that night at any major NWA wrestling event, you knew you were in for a brawl.
Yeah,
that evening. And Jim Cornette coming down to the ring with the tennis racket.
There it is, Chris.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah. Chris, funny story.
I mean you just knew, how can I say this, Tony? You knew just from the beat who was walking the aisle.
Yes.
They didn't even need an introduction from the ring announcer.
No.
Just like when Flair's music would hit, or Dusty's music would hit, or rock and roll, and Tony, the list goes on and on. But and the Freebirds as well. I mean, but from a heel standpoint, when that music hit, okay, here come the Midnight Express. Whether they had the straps around their waist or not, it didn't even matter.
It didn't matter.
It was just over.
They were they were the first. We'll get more into this as the podcast goes on, but I think one of the greatest accomplishments of the Midnight Express was, in the 80s, if you were in a tag team and you were already a tag team champion, and you went against another tag team. So in other words, if you was U.S. tag champions and you taking on the world tag champions, right? The belts aren't going to change hands because they're not going to. One team's not going to hold both belts. They never let that happen in the history of professional wrestling until the Midnight Express got in the feud with the Four Horsemen. I'm talking about Arn and Tully, and man, once they started, that if Arn and Tully hadn't jumped to WWF at the time, I think that feud between the Midnight Express and the Four Horsemen would have been just as big, if not bigger, than the feud between the Rock and Roll and the Midnight, because that feud was so hot and so it had so much heat and so much realism in it. Like as a fan, you really bought into. I remember when I was a kid, watching this feud on TV. Up until this point, Bobby Eaton never ever talked on TV. Never. He never talked on TV. To. No, he didn't need to. And
no, Bobby Eaton. That was the mystique about Bobby Eaton. Was Jim Cornette? Listen, he did all the talking for the Midnight Express, and maybe Dennis Condrey a little bit, and Stan Lane had the look. He had a look that no one else could. But Bobby Eaton, he did his talking in the ring.
Yeah. And right now, Chris, I want to play a little clip of what I'm talking about. This happened on July the 30th, 1988, as they're on television. The Midnight Express just got through working a match, and they're doing an interview. And J.J. Dillon and Arn and Tully interrupt their interview, and this is the first time, fans, that you got to hear Bobby Eaton talk on TV. But yeah, that was a tremendous feud with the Horsemen and the Midnight Express. That like I said, they never put two heels against each other. But of course, at the end, once Bobby and Stan defeated Arn and Tully, and then they went to WWF, Midnight Express become baby faces. But it was so weird because they still cheated. Cornette still cut heel promos on the fans, but the fans still cheered them, and then finally, they finally started working like baby faces.
Absolutely, and even though they were baby faces, I think the fans and probably some cheered for them, and some were still like, okay, but it didn't matter. I mean, I just think the skill level they had was great for tag team wrestling at a perfect time for the NWA and for Southern wrestling and who they feuded with. It was Rock and Roll, the Fantastics, whoever else stepped in the ring with them. It worked. And I'm going to tell you now, Dennis Condrey was a bad you-know-what in the ring.
Oh, he listen, he was outside the ring too.
Yeah, outside the ring too. And Bobby, found a way to make it work with that team. And Jim Cornette was the mouthpiece. And then Stan Lane came in. I mean, really, Stan Lane, you know, brought something to the team that they didn't have with Dennis, and easily it could have imploded that team. You know, with Stan Lane's kind of arrogance, you know, Bobby Eaton in the background, they could almost did an angle there that they have. But the thing is it still worked at the end of the day, and it still made themselves relevant. And you know, when you talk about, you know, when you talk about, say, top 10 tag teams of all time, I'm going to go top 10 because everyone's going to have their opinion. I don't know about top 5. There's a lot out there. I got to say, the Midnight Express is in the talk. You know,
yeah.
When you go of all time tag teams,
at least top 5. They're definitely in the top 5, yeah, without a doubt.
You know, and yes, some people I put them in the top 5. I'll go 10 just because of you know, everyone else is out there, and you know, but if you're a hardcore, yeah, they probably could be top 5.
Yeah,
of all time.
And you know,
when you start thinking of the Road Warriors, rock and roll,
mm-hmm.
we can go down the list here.
Oh,
course,
yeah.
I mean, you know,
yeah, for sure.
And it's crazy.
Yeah, and Chris, I'll tell you, if you look back on the history of the Midnight Express, how they started and where they ended up at, you know, later on in the WWF, they put Bob Holly and Bart Gunn together as the new Midnight Express. But you know,
mm-hmm.
we're not even going to talk about that. Okay, what I want to talk about is
that was garbage.
For sure. I want to talk about the formation of the Midnight Express and what I like to refer to as the glory years of that name and that team. Now, in 1980, Dennis Condrey and Randy Rose were the original Midnight Express. They
mm-hmm.
formed that team in 1980, and then in 1981 they were joined by Norvell Austin, and then this group disbanded in 1983. But later that same year, a new version of the Midnight Express was formed in Mid-South Wrestling, teaming up Condrey and Bobby Eaton with the manager Jim Cornette. After leaving Mid-South, they competed very briefly in Dallas's, Fritz von Erich's World Class Championship Wrestling. And then in 1985, they moved to Jim Crockett Promotions, and that is where the Midnight Express became, worldwide stars. Everybody became a worldwide star when they came to Crockett Promotions in 85, because that's when they got the Superstation and it really took off. Then in 1987, now before this, before I get to 87, there in 1980, the Midnight Express comes to Crockett Promotions in 85. The first feud is with Jimmy Valiant and Miss Atlanta Lively, and then right after that is when they finally hooked them up with the Rock and Roll, and we finally got to see the two Expresses feud. And of course, they would trade the World Tag Team titles once, just one time at that point. And then in 1987, out of the blue, Condrey leaves, and they replace Condrey with Stan Lane, and to me, and I'm not taking anything away from Dennis Condrey. I love Dennis Condrey, but my favorite version of the Midnight Express was Stan Lane and Bobby Eaton. They would put up these moves, Chris, and these moves would have these cool, crazy names. Like they'd have this move where the guy'd be in the middle of the ring, and Bobby would come out and roll into the guy's legs, and Stan would give the guy a clothesline. They call that the double goozle. They had the rocket launcher. They had the divorce court, the flapjack. I mean, they had so many names. The grave digger. They had so many names for these finishing holds and these finishing moves that they came up with. I mean, they had it going on. And then something cool happens in 1988. Dennis Condrey returns to World Championship Wrestling with his original partner Randy Rose as the original Midnight Express. They jumped Bobby and Stan and Cornette on on television, and then that feud takes off. Then they feud a little bit more with Rock and Roll, and then in 1988 they do their feud with the Horsemen, which turns out to be tremendous as well. And then of course the Midnight Express, they break up in 89, in 1990. Stan and Cornette leave World Championship Wrestling, but Bobby stays behind and has a really good singles run with the World Television title, and then he ends up dropping that one to Stunning Steve, who's not quite Stone Cold yet. But then the Midnight Express, they reunite, and this is something that nobody saw coming. But in 2004 through 2011. The Midnight Express, Bobby and Dennis, get back together, and they are on this tour of the independent circuit, and they renew their feud with the Rockland Express. And it's like all these people that wanted to see this match never got to see it live, now get to see it. Now, Chris, were you ever able to witness any of that stuff that they did from 2004 to 2011?
Not so. I mean, yeah, I did. I did. And yeah, it was some crazy stuff. If there is one thing that tickles me pink, is I actually got to see the Midnight Express wrestle in person, a couple of times, and also Bobby in one-on-one. A kid from up in the Northeast didn't have that kind of exposure like you did down here, Tony. You drive over to the Greensboro Coliseum or the LJVM, and they're right there in front of you.
Oh yeah.
So it was a treat to see them wrestle in person. Not so much Jim. I mean, I knew Jim Cornette obviously from the WWF days, and he was bouncing all around and stuff. But And the great thing with the Midnight Express was the tennis racket. I mean,
yeah.
Cornette, whether he used it or one of the guys used it, whatever, you always knew the tennis racket was going to be somewhere in the mix, especially on the bigger shows in major cities and pay-per-views and on national television. So, but yeah, there was also some other crazy stuff with the Midnight Express going on, and it was like. I know that era you're talking about, but, when it comes to their wrestling ethic in the ring, I think it was second to none.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And if you just go back and look at all the championships that they've won and all different variations of the Midnight Express, Eaton and Condrey had the most tag team championships. They were the All-Star Wrestling Tag Team Champions. Jim Crockett Promotions, they were the NWA World Tag Team Champions. They were 2 times Mid-South Tag Team Champions. NWA Rocky Top Tag Team Champions 19 times, Chris. And then, of course, in World Class Championship Wrestling, they were the one-time NWA American Tag Team Champions. They had a lot, and then in 1986 they were known as they were voted Tag Team of the Year by the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Then Condrey and Rose, they were the AWA World Tag Team Champions. They were the Southern Tag Team Champions. The list goes on and on. I mean, the Midnight Express team was very, very successful in the wrestling business. But if you go back and look just at Bobby Eaton, I think that right there tells you who the strong member was, because without a doubt he was the longest member of the Midnight Express. As far as how long they kept it going. And of course today, August the 4th, we learned that Bobby has passed away. But all the respect that all the biggest names in wrestling have, I have never in my life ever heard anybody, and I don't think you ever will, hear them say anything, sad or bad about Bobby Eaton. I mean, he was just a tremendous hand in the ring and outside the ring, the nicest guy you ever met. Chris, a funny story about Bobby. I've heard this story from a lot of guys, but Bobby would he would come to the buildings with this huge gym bag, right? And in that bag, he would have things for other people, like if they needed it. Like he would have socks, he would have toothbrushes. He would. I mean, he had extra stuff for everybody. He always came prepared. And I thought that was I thought that was really cool. And like I heard the Steiners tell a story one time how they were like trying to have a contest to see if they could ask for something and not be in Bobby's bag. And so I think it was Rick said, "Hey, you got a spoon?" He's like, "Yeah, I got a spoon." And of course he had like a whole silverware set in this bag. So Bobby was prepared. He was prepared inside the ring and outside the ring. And definitely the world has lost a great hand and a great person. Arn Anderson went on his Twitter today and he says, this morning I was awakened by one of the voices that I value most, my wife. On this day, she delivered the worst news possible. The world lost its finest citizen. If there was a kinder, gentler person, I would sure love to meet them. I could spend all day talking about how special he was in a wrestling ring. That's easy. What is hard to do justice to the person he was. To his family, thank you for sharing Bobby with the world. I will treasure the memories of him forever. And that was from Arn Anderson. And Arn and Bobby, no secret, behind the scenes, they were really close friends. And then, of course, they become a tag team in the Dangerous Alliance and become WCW Tag Team Champions. Chris, if you look back, almost everybody that Bobby teamed with, he won titles with.
One time, I mean, he was, it goes much more beyond the ring. He was respected in the locker room, respected outside the ring. I mean, he was a guy that showed up, did his job, made good money, very good money in the business. And he never really got wrapped up in a whole lot of different things. He moved from town, went to the next book in next town. And, that's just the way he lived his life, and it carried on, outside the ring as well, both personally and professionally. And, I think if any organization had 100 Bobby Eatons, they'd be in a perfect world.
Oh yeah.
With no problems behind the scenes and locker rooms and drama and this and that. And he just, I think he just enjoyed what he did, no matter what the storyline might have been or the match he was in, and or whether it was singles, and he wrestled singles a lot as well, not just tag team. I mean, right. And especially if they were trying to set up storylines on a singles end to eventually get to a tag team angle at a certain city or town or on television. So, he was a very good singles wrestler as well. I mean, but obviously the forte was the tag team, and hey, it worked, man. I mean, it worked, and those were guys that will always be upper mid carders up to main event. I mean, it was the midnight. They were never really low on the show, no matter what they were doing. So, I mean, they were definitely in what you saw on television, and then it came to your hometown.
Yeah, for sure. Wrestling is definitely a better place because of Bobby Eaton. I mean, he was one of the best. Mm-hmm. Even Ric Flair would go out and say, hey, Bobby is awesome. And of course, one time we got to see on the Clash of the Champions, 2 out of 3 falls, Bobby Eaton and Ric Flair. They took it down to the wire and almost thought Bobby was going to take Flair out, but of course, there at the end, Flair came back, put on the figure 4. And the rest is history. But man, this one definitely hits home. It hits a little harder than most others. Just for my personal thing is, he was my favorite wrestler, and I'm definitely sad, but I'm also happy at the same time. That I'm happy that I got to know him and meet him, and I'm glad that he was the best at what he did.
Yeah, absolutely. He was he definitely had a craft, both, from a technical standpoint in the ring, and, knew how to work the tag team matches. And, and it pissed off a lot of people with the Rock and Roll Express. And I mean, they were the team you love to hate. I mean, they really were, and they were perfect personalities. And at that time in wrestling, it worked. And, I don't know in today's wrestling, Tony, if a lot of Bobby Eatons could get over just because of the demographic of who the fan is today. But back when you and I, back in the 80s and 90s, it was over, no matter what.
Yes.
And it just worked. And they drew money. They drew money from a tag team angle. And listen, and I'm going to say this per se. I know everyone came to see Flair and Dusty and Magnum and all those guys, but I think to a little bit of an extent, and maybe you might agree with me on this, I think some people really came to see some of the tag team matches, to take that all in. And we know Flair's in the main event and all that good stuff, but that drew great interest back then, and there were great storylines, and people clung on to it.
Yeah. And another thing, if you look back and go watch Bobby Eaton do that Alabama Jam, man, it looks like he's fallen forever off that top rope. But man, it was a beautiful move to see him hit, see him land on, man. It was great. So, Bobby, we love you. We miss you. And, man, our condolences and prayers out to the Eaton family during this tragic time. Now, Chris, let's kind of turn our podcast. We kind of went in the reversal roll this week, but let's talk some concerts now. Let's talk about your music report.
Oh my gosh, the music report! I mean, Tony, I'm going to tell you right now, the concerts here in the Carolinas are off the scene, both on the national level, the local level. It's like the floodgates have opened up. I'm serious. I mean, PNC Music Pavilion in Charlotte's opened up, the Fillmore, the Uptown Amphitheater. Every local music venue in town is open, and people are flooding out. And God, I saw Chicago play in late June, and then peaked at Luke Bryan here a couple of weeks ago, and then Dave Matthews Band, and then the tours are coming. And now over the next 8 to 12 weeks, we are going to get influxed here with national touring acts into the Carolinas, and it's great.
Yeah, I mean it's really going to take off. I think when summer hits, as long as they can keep this COVID, on the back burner, the backside, and we can stay healthy. I look forward to some, getting back to normal things here in the next few months. I can't wait. So man, it's going to be great. And this weekend, hey, I didn't get a chance to record a commercial, but let me tell you folks something. If you want to see some great wrestling action, then you've got to head over to the NAWA, as they are having their Heat Wave event Saturday. This coming Saturday, August the 7th, at the American Legion Hall in Lenore, North Carolina. Bell time is going to be 7 p.m. Doors open at 6. They're going to have a huge card, and yours truly is going to be there, and I'm looking forward to that. Can't wait to get there to the NAWA. But there's great.
And Tony, if I may, I know you've got some bookings lined up here.
Man, I do.
You're
Chris.
A wanted man.
Man, hey, one thing that I need to mention. Coming up this month, August, August the 22nd, I believe it is, will mark my anniversary in the wrestling business, Chris. This is going to make me feel old or make me feel accomplished. I don't know which, but it will give me 29 years in the wrestling business, 29 years that I have been doing this. Man, I wouldn't change anything. Oh, I'd change a lot, but it wouldn't be, I still wrestled. But I think I would have hung around guys more like Bobby Eaton and the guys like that, because man, if at the end of the day you have two people that feel about you the way the world feels about Bobby, you're definitely doing something great. You're doing something right, But yeah,
but I gotta say, I did see a video online of you over the weekend, and I know you had a big title defense, and I loved your promo at ringside, and you were like, "You want a shot at this?"
Yeah. You want a shot?
You're gonna get it, man. I mean, it was classic. You're like, we're gonna take care of my lightweight business here real quick.
Oh man, it was so funny that show you're talking about. That was our first show in the NAWA, first show back with fans, and I pride myself in being a great heel, and I went out there and I got on the mic and I said, hey, how was I said? I said something like, "Hey, I know it's been a long time since you people have got a chance to look at me, but one thing I've realized now that you're not wearing masks, you're still as ugly as you were before the masks." And once I said that, man, the boos came from all the way in the back, and
oh man!
And then of course I said, and then the guy goes, "Hey, put the belt up." I'm like, "Oh, you want me to put my belt up? Okay, I'll put my belt up." And then I told the people, too. If you people don't shut up, I'm taking my belt and I'm leaving. He won't get no stinking title shot. And of course the boos came, and but it was a fun match, and of course I had it with our one of our former guests on the show, talking about Corey Edsel, and he'll be coming back here in the next couple weeks.
Beautiful.
He's going to be coming back and telling some more stories, and I'm looking forward to that. But man, I'm really looking forward to getting back to normal, getting back out there doing these shows and seeing the people, and man, I can't wait. This Saturday night in Lenore is going to be red hot, and so make sure you fans head over to the NAWA page and pull that up. And then there's a couple more big events coming up, here in the next few weeks. I'm booked on another show, Chris, September the 11th, down in South Carolina. It's going to be at the Rock Hill High School in on Springdale Road there in Rock Hill, South Carolina. We're going to have the Rock and Roll Express is going to be there. A ton of other people are going to be there, and this show is to benefit the 809 Foundation. So fans, go to the PWF Facebook page, and you can get all the information about that show. And then I've got another big NAWA show coming up also in October, and we'll talk more about that on next week's podcast. Chris, you have anything else before we go off the air today?
Man, Tony, this has been a great show. I know it was centered around the death of this week of beautiful Bobby Eaton, the Midnight Express, but it was a great show, and I'm looking forward to next week's show. And man, I know you're going to have some stories for us. I know those fans of Lenore are ready for you this weekend at the NAWA, and they're going to knock it out, and you're going to keep moving on from town to town. But I know you got something in store for them this weekend, and looking forward to it. Thank you for having me a part of it. And hey, the Midnight Express will live forever in professional wrestling lore and history, and beautiful Bobby Eaton was a very, very big part of that.
For sure. Well, fans, for Chris and I'm Tony, we like to thank you for joining us each week on the Binge Buster Show. Make sure you go like us on our Facebook page. If you would like to hear or see a guest on our show, make sure you send me a message on Facebook, and I'll try to make that happen. We got WrestleCade coming up here in the next few months. We're going to have a lot of the stars from WrestleCade is going to be on the podcast coming up in the next few weeks, so make sure you tune in for that. But we got a lot going on. I can't wait. So, fans, we'll see you next week here on the Binge Buster Show. Beautiful Bobby Eaton was a member of the Midnight Express under the management of Jim Cornette. He originally teamed with Dennis Condrey and later on with Stan Lane. He also worked with a number of other tag team partners, including Arn Anderson, Coco Beware, Steve Kern, and Lord Steven Regal. Over the course of Bobby's career, which lasted from 1976 to 2015, Bobby wrestled with every major wrestling promotion in the world, including World Class Championship Wrestling, Jim Crockett Promotions, World Championship Wrestling, and Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Bobby was inducted into the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame in 2009 and the Professional Hall of Fame in 2019. Bobby has held a lot of championships over the world, including the NWA World Television title, the NWA World Tag Team titles, and the United States Tag Team titles. Bobby was also a member of the Blue Bloods. Every wrestler that wanted to be the best would step in the ring with Bobby. Bobby was just that good. And on August the 4th, 2021, the wrestling community lost a friend in beautiful Bobby Eaton. The BengeBuster Show would love to send out our condolences to the Eaton family during this special time. So today, while you're out there walking around, always know that the Sultan of Swing, beautiful Bobby Eaton, was and is and always will be the greatest tag team wrestler in the history of professional wrestling.
Thank you for listening to The BengeBuster Show. Make sure you like us on Facebook and download us on your favorite podcast platform.